Hello everybody to the first portion of our playthrough review for Alone in the Dark. I was looking forward to playing this game ever since I played the prologue because it seemed so unique with the different creatures you came across as well as the Lovecraftian detective genre. I didn't know anything more about its coming out past the prologue, so I didn't know the cast or what it was really going to be about. But here we are, and this is the first section of our spoiler review, by the way. So if you don't want to be spoiled, don't continue listening. It's kind of a walkthrough, but kind of not. I do mention where things are, but I also talk about the game as a whole as things come up, such as conversation, notes, and combat. This is a preview of our podcast for this game, if it comes out. Some of my podcast episodes are going to be very long, so they take a long time to do since I write everything out and then record it. But if you're interested in a full podcast of this game, feel free to like this video and tell me how much you loved it. Let me start by saying I never played the original of this game, so I have no idea what it's going to be about and only know things based on the short prologue I played some time back, like I said. I know that it had a creepy atmosphere, things weren't always what they seemed, and there are a few different monsters lurking about that don't seem to be too out of the ordinary. At least it didn't seem that way to the girl we played in the prologue. The 2024 version of the Alone in the Dark starts us off with some environmental detail that clearly tells us we're somewhere out in the bayou out in New Orleans. And given that this is our location, you can probably already imagine we're going to run into something along the lines of voodoo, even if it isn't the main focal point. At least, I'd like to think so. I know very little of voodoo, but did have a voodoo doll once upon a time as a kid. Yeah. Who needs Barbie and Ken when you can stab pins and needles into something that has a resemblance to someone you know, right? I mean, I didn't think along those lines back then, but I did try to sabotage my brother at some point with it. Didn't work out though. Anyway, the cinematic shows us looking at a toad at the start who's then eaten by what looks like a caiman, though I don't think they're native to Louisiana. So we're just going to say it's a crocodile. A car has to stop before hitting said crocodile, but going by the way of things, I thought this was setting up as a domino effect. Toad dies to crocodile, crocodile dies to car gets struck by something. Good times all around. But no, the only good time comes from the crocodile who got a free meal and a free pass on life. Kinda reminds me of when I went to Yellowstone National Park and there'd be bison just chilling on the road and whatnot, and I give him a crap that you need to get through or anything. Though it does move out of the way, and we then get a conversation between two characters in the car. Emily Hartwood, who's played by Jodie Comer, who I know from Free Guy, though I didn't know who she was for the life of me when I played the game at first. And then there's Edward Canby, who's played by David Harbour, the chief of police from Stranger Things. Turns out that Emily's uncle, Jeremy Hartwood, is possessed, though she doesn't believe that to be the case. Instead, her family suffers from deteriorating melancholy, she calls it. But I'm going to assume that's more along the lines of what we'd call melancholia, which is a type of depression. He's gone to Derceto, which is something of a psychiatric hospital, hoping to find a cure through Dr. Gray's psychoanalysis. But all he's managed to do is become even more paranoid by blaming the staff for being in a cult and out to get him. This is all in a letter he wrote to Emily. And we all know, whenever we get a vague letter or video stating where someone is and bad things might be happening, the main character just has to go check it out. But I guess this one checks out because she knows her uncle is mentally unstable and suffering from an illness that seems to affect everyone in her family at some point. So now she's just going to check in on him, though I find it really odd that she's brought a private investigator to come with her, and is even paying him. Like, does she know something? Why would a private investigator be needed here if she just didn't want to come here alone? Unless he's really the only person she confides in and wanted to pay him for his troubles? Then again, she also requested he bring a gun just in case he needs to wave it around. And it's not that she didn't want to come alone. It's that she didn't feel safe coming alone. This again can be two-sided. On one hand, we're entering a place that's home to people who aren't quite a stable mind, and who knows who's a guest here and what they're going through. She could possibly get hurt. But she could also know something more, and that something more could end up hurting her. I would like to say, though, there's a quote from her that hits home about Jeremy telling himself all these lies because he doesn't want to face the truth, which is
that we're all terribly insignificant, that people mean so very little to one another. There is no one out to get Jeremy Hartwood because he isn't worth getting.
Damn. When you approach the house, you're left with a choice on who to go with in your playthrough, either Edward or Emily. I feel like Edward's the first choose favorite for people who play this game just because a lot of people know him as Hopper from Stranger Things. But even if that wasn't the case, he's got a gun, which means combat. Not to say that Emily won't be finding a weapon in her own playthrough, but combat and recognition of a character is more fun to most people. If you think about it, Edward doesn't know anything about Jeremy, so he's in a blind search for Emily's uncle to help her find him. Emily, however, knows her uncle. Probably knows what he's going through mentally, I'd say, to a certain extent. So she's going to understand things that Edward doesn't. It's a good way to split two different people from the main storyline while also keeping things constant between the both of them as you progress. Characters will more than likely act different depending on who you're playing as, the hard-edged male detective or the more feminine family member. It makes you want to play both characters, honestly, just to see the differences. But I went with Edward. Since standing outside a door hoping someone will be around to open is too boring, we'll be making our way around back in order to either find someone or let Emily in ourselves. Of course, this is also our first clue that something is off here. A mental hospital with nobody answering the door and with everything looking like the place is abandoned. I would just like a psychological horror where you approach a large house or mansion and there are actual staff to greet you. It actually looks lived in and lively. Why does every horror location have to be empty, even when people live there? Throw us for a loop over here. Going through the door initiates Chapter 1. At this point, we control the character in a third-person point of view. At the bottom left, we've got an action wheel for two different things. The flask is for healing yourself. I don't think you can drink this multiple times to get yourself drunk, but that'd be kind of fun to have Edward stumbling around for a short period of time. When you're at full health, you can't use the flask at all. You've also got your weapon, which is a pistol. You can start collecting a lot of pistol ammo in the beginning of the game, which is slightly unnerving because it makes you think something is coming sooner than you'd expect. But the game is just making sure you're geared up, I guess. Your first combat scene is still a little ways away. Also, as you pick up the ammo, it states that it's pistol ammo, indicating that there's other ammo you can get in the future. You'll also notice a notebook appearing in the upper right corner from time to time, which is objectives being written. You can go into your objective menu and there's a voiceover recapping what just happened with typewriter sounds in the background as she speaks. The first items you acquire here are the flashlight as well as the kitchen garden key. You won't be able to accidentally skip out on these items in your haste of moving forward because the path will be too dark. When you do retrieve an item, you're able to open them, which basically just means to open your inventory, because you can't exactly open a key if it's just a normal everyday key. As you're viewing items in your inventory, you can also view them. This isn't huge for normal items since you can't rotate them at all. They're just a static image. But if you're looking at a piece of paper that has something drawn on it, then viewing it will bring it closer so you're able to see the images better. Do note that the flashlight is of amazing quality, how small it is. And you don't have to worry about batteries at all. If you do check out your inventory here, you can find your Edward Carnby PI badge, as well as a lasting debt note.
Carnby, why am I hearing from Gloria Allen that you got some job at the loony bin? You better not be thinking of paying her off before me. I don't want to take you for a ride, so get me my money. I'll be at the Maccabean all night if you score some dough. Obed Morton.
The lasting debt is basically a threat from someone named Obed Morton that Carnby owes him money. And he wants it before he pays off Emily. And it's an old school mobster kind of threat over the whole, I don't want to take you for a ride statement. What is he paying her off for? I thought she was paying him for coming with her here, right? Did I get that wrong? You know, after going through this a second time, he was not talking about Emily, he was talking about someone else, so I got this part fully wrong. Never mind. I read it wrong. That was my bad. Sorry, Emily. When you go down the hall, you'll need to unlock the door, and I just want to say that the unlocking of door animations are so aesthetically pleasing to watch and listen to. It's literally just an up close of the lock located on a door and a key going inside and turning, but damn, it feels nice to watch and listen to it click. I'm pretty sure Resident Evil 7 and the like did the same kind of animations. The first area of the house we come to, aside from the garage that we were just in, is the kitchen gardens. It's got your typical plants, competing with most of the space, a table for two smack dab in the center, as well as a female statue tucked into the corner that watches whoever sits at that table. It is an outside area, and I suppose it would look nice on some days with the sun filtering through the trees, but now is not that time. The ambience here is very distant. The sounds of cicadas, I suppose, and the occasional crows, perhaps, an echoing drip. The primary sounds are your footsteps. One of the things you'll notice in the gardens is a locked-up tool shed. A locked-up tool shed that requires a bolt cutter to get in, to be more precise. How many horror games out there don't use a bolt cutter at this point? When was an unspoken agreement that most all horror games have to have a bolt cutter in order to get through certain places? I get it, they're a handy tool, but how many places need a bolt cutter out there to get in, and who just leaves them lying around? What about all the horror films that don't use bolt cutters? Are they doing it wrong? God forbid someone's being chased by a bad guy and comes across a door that they can't get through because they left their bolt cutters at home. Side note, if you've never played the game Deponia before, the main character has a list of what to take with him when he leaves, and one of those is a bolt cutter. Except a suitcase won't close, so he has to take something out, and when you click on them, he says something like, bolt cutters. Where am I going to use bolt cutters? And of course he needs them in the next section. There's nothing to do in this area right now. The game just wanted to point out the locked shed as well as an area in the corner that's something of note that you can't get to quite yet. So the objective still stands at finding a way inside the house. The next area you enter is a conservatory. It's technically still outside, but with glass walls all around. You've got hanging bird cages with nothing in them, signifying either the birds have died or nobody's bothered to catch any of the crows that always seem to gather around. Some benches to sit on and relax and listen to the non-existent birds, as well as a trickling fountain in the center that has some stagnant-looking water in it. A perfect greenhouse scenario, if you will, considering the larger-than-life tree tucked off to the side. If you're playing Edward, he'll mention that it's a big tree to fit inside of a conservatory, but if you're playing as Emily, she'll mention that they had to build the conservatory around the tree in order to fit it in. I agree with her. How's anyone going to know the amount of space to get that tree if they planted it first? It sort of looks like a weeping willow, which also makes me think of the tree in Hogwarts Legacy, where they had the class regarding the mandrakes. Get close enough to this tree, however, and you'll be able to hear whispers. You can't really make them out at this point, though. In order to progress, there's the housekeeper's key in a pot that's broken, which makes it an absolutely terrible hiding spot. Once in the next area, we receive the achievement, Welcome to Derceto. In one of the attached rooms, you can find the family Bible. There's a lot going on when you read it, and I wanted to look into some things that I wasn't sure of. Like I said, I don't know much about voodoo priests and priestesses, and some of the things they use for the craft and all, and it's kind of interesting to me.
Every day your silence weighs a little heavier. It's been a difficult year for everyone, and many have lost all hope. I read in the papers about people suffering. Pictures of dust-covered landscapes without a drop of water. I wish I knew if you were still tending the earth or if you had turned your back against us. I have started to look for help elsewhere. I pray you will tell me if I am going down a path that you find disagreeable. With help from Baptiste and Charlotte, I found comfort in the practice of the voodoo. I have long been skeptical of that Caribbean cult, but it's been of good use to me. It seems all harmless in my book. I say some words dreamt up by the Creoles, and I carry around a small pocket of gris-gris. Nothing of this is mentioned in the Bible, of course, but the French Quarter priestess tells me it's all connected. She says the Christian God is just one more perspective on the creator of things. That's what I like to think, but the other way around, that the spirits of her faith are just aspects of you, our Heavenly Father. I am so grateful for the words you gave Mr. Hartwood. We will sing your praises at St. John's Eve. the world will be blessed soon again. Only the sacrifices of the Old Testament compare to your demands. Let it be the truth. A mother of earth, wood, and dirt. A mother of 1,000 young.
Sacred sand, $1. Black cat oil, $1.50. Devil shoestrings, a quarter. That makes $2.75, madame.
What was that you were telling the doctor? A goat without horns. What does that mean?
Ah, you must have misheard me, madame. I said no such thing.
Please, I know I don't look like any of you, but I'm devout. I'm ready to do what it takes.
Do not be so eager to sacrifice the few things you have left, madame. Now please, leave my store.
A goat without horns.
It sounds as if this person is speaking to a god or goddess instead of a person, due to mention of their silence and the world suffering and becoming a dried husk, basically. And due to the silence, they sought help elsewhere, but didn't want to offend the being in question by doing so. We get two names, Baptiste and Charlotte, who goes by Lottie. They'd had to be practicers of voodoo by the sounds of it, and I can only assume they turned this person to it as well. At first I thought that Baptiste might be a god since we're dabbling with religion here, but once I looked at Charlotte's name, I was like, there's no way. I can't imagine a goddess being named Charlotte unless they were hiding under a guise of some sort. Plus I was confusing the name Baptiste with Bastet anyway. There's mention of a Caribbean cult, maybe that Baptiste and Charlotte are part of, and Grigri. I'm familiar with the term Grigri. I've seen it in books when I read urban fantasy novels, but I don't think I ever knew what it was. Just what it was associated with. It's actually something, typically amulet or incantation of sorts, that either wards off evil or brings misfortune to others. In this case, I'm going to say she's carrying it around to ward off evil. I wonder if that's technically what a hex bag is that witches use in the series of Supernatural? I mean, technically it does bring misfortune to those it's aimed at, so. She goes to say she's thankful for the words he gave Mr. Hartwood, which is Emily's uncle Jeremy. Meaning this letter is to a male then, as also signified by the Heavenly Father statement, to whom she's not addressing the Christian God. What I don't understand is the statement of a mother of earth, wood, and dirt, a mother of 1,000 young. And then there's a receipt tacked on at the end of a few things she's bought for black magic, and an ending conversation regarding a goat with horns. It's actually beneficial to listen to the voice actor here because there's extra being said that isn't written in text. Looking back on it, I wonder if she's writing this to the Dark Man, which Jeremy has some kind of connection with. That also makes me wonder if the Dark Man could be Aloa? If there's some kind of contract going on and Voodoo is a primary suspect, I would think that makes sense. Continuing to the next room where we're in the kitchen. If you turn to the right inside the closed door is the pantry where you can find rat poison, which is one of the collectibles known as lanyap, and by definition is a small gift given to a customer by a merchant at the time of purchase. Does that mean the devs are giving us these collectibles as a thank you for purchasing and playing their game? I wanted to mention the rat poison in there because at a later date you won't be able to enter the kitchen due to the housekeeper getting upset with you mucking about. Obviously at some point you'll probably be able to enter and grab it, the same playthrough or even a different one if you choose to play with a secondary character, but it's something worth noting. Another thing worth noting is that you'll be unable to collect all lanyaps unless you play through the game on both characters. The ones you do get transfer over, so it's up to you to find the other ones that are only character specific. If you go into the boiler room, there's a sabotage note regarding the boiler.
Please do not touch the boiler. It is working after all. While the sabotage has caused a leak, only the decorative plate has been completely ruined. Let's wait for Mr. Chance to turn up and he can take a look at the leak. Mr. Waits.
It sprung a leak thanks to someone messing with it, and if it is sabotage that's caused the blockade, it makes you wonder what's on the other side of the steam. It's nothing you can fiddle with now, but this is where you'll be completing a plate puzzle once you've acquired both pieces. Another dead end that you can enter is the first portion of the cellar, as the second part of it is locked up. And here you can get the streetcar ticket. Leaving the cellar, I think, is the moment I realized doors do close behind you, but it's more noticeable for the cellar due to the creaky iron doors, and I think I was just too engrossed with possible things I needed to find to recognize the click of doors closing after I'd walked away from them. Once you actually take note of it, it does get a bit creepy, but honestly at this point it's not something that's as startling as it should be. Personally, I love exploring in a game. Finding things that were tucked away that you wouldn't have been able to find if you hadn't actively been looking for something out of the ordinary. But given the fact that our objective is to let Emily into the house and we're permitted to wander around to a certain extent, it kinda dulls the game a bit. We get a lot of ammo, we get a lot of health. We get some notes and backstory and collectibles, but aside from that, this is a walking simulator at this point. I think it would have worked better if they'd locked off specific areas, such as the pantry and the cellar, so we're basically forced to not be able to explore yet and do what our objective demands us to do. Think about it. We're wandering about while Emily is still outside the front door waiting to get in. Are we going to need the ammo soon? Yeah. Are we going to need the health soon? That's a possibility. Do we need either one right now? No. There's no threat around us. There's a buildup of a possible threat when they hand these things out, but it's an empty promise. There's nothing that's going to jump out at us at the moment. And even in the section where there are enemies, the game gives us enough ammo to pick up to deal with them when they need to be dealt with. There's no need for all the downtime. It took me 6 minutes to get to chapter 1, which was mainly a cutscene. And also bits of the recording being like on the menu screen. At this time of the recording, I'm almost 18 minutes in and nothing's happened. Exploration is great, but let it happen when a location becomes something of a priority. Moving forward as you go through the house, you'll come across doors that will obviously be locked and need a key, but there are other doors with a barred icon. This is kind of like a shortcut door. You won't be able to open it from one side until you get rid of what's stopping it from opening on the other side. In the first open room you come across, Lottie's room, you'll find the Derceto floor plans, of which there are 3, as well as the Piazza key. The map of the floors is excellent and very reminiscent of Resident Evil Village. The rooms have a specific color when you not explore them, when you've explored them fully and there's nothing left inside, and when there's something unique within the room. For instance, in the boiler room there's a puzzle piece icon to remind you need to do something there, like find the valve as well as finish the panel. Puzzle icons don't pertain to things that are locked, however, such as the medicine box in Lottie's room. It simply remains a pink background for now. You can also see which doors are locked as well as which ones you just have no access to, like with the front door at Derceto. Putting the map down for now, you can read Lottie's diary sitting on a table by the bed.
Sunday, June 22nd. I spent all day looking for Jeremy. I should have cared for the others, but I'm scared that he will do something irreversible. Cassandra is upset that I didn't give her the latest shipment of pain medication that Waits brought from the post office yesterday. I would have given it to her, but the company didn't send a new key this time around, so the box is just sitting there on my desk. They must have figured we had plenty of their gimmicky keys by now. I only remember seeing one lately. Grace was playing with it inside the grand parlor. Unless it turns up by itself, it will have to wait. I have to figure out where Jeremy is. I think Jack knew something. That dog of his found a strange rot permeating the house. She's showing us, he said. Like those blots and streaks of fetid rot was talking to him.
Judging by what she wrote, she seems to be a caretaker, but is sort of forced to neglect a certain Cassandra, who needs her pain meds in favor of looking for Jeremy. There's another person named Waits that we're clued in on, who we also know wrote the note down in the boiler room. He went to the post office in order to obtain Cassandra's pain medication, but it came without a key, so the box is literally sitting in the room we're in right now due to being unable to open it. Why would the pain medication box reuse the same kind of key over and over, though? That's what the letter is hinting at with the line, "They must have figured we had plenty of their gimmicky keys by now." Meaning the medication has been coming for a good while if the keys are plenty. Is it weird for medication to come in a locked box as well? Was that normal for this day and age, or is it something this game does to evoke a sense of importance to what's in the box? I mean, if the only key you recall seeing that goes to this box was in the hands of a girl named Grace, who was playing with it, then someone doesn't take care of the keys very well. What if a patient nabs a key and gets into the medicine and takes it themselves? Hello? Or the staff part of the halfway house's residents too? Hello? She also states that Jack knew something, whoever that is, and his dog. I didn't even realize there was a dog in this place. I know, it's the story of the game, but still. Unless she's using it as a slur for a person who acts like a dog, but I doubt it, since it found rot that's growing around the house. There's a she that's mentioned, showing them something that has to do with the rot, I'd wager. I have no idea, and at this point we have a lot of character names and a lot of nothing surrounding them, other than what's stated in the letters we're reading. To name the characters we know so far: Emily Hartwood, Edward Canby, Jeremy Hartwood, Dr. Gray, Obed Morton, Batiste, Charlotte/Lottie, Cassandra, Waits, Grace, Jack, and Jack's dog. Obed Morton and Jack's dog are kinda up in the air as characters, but if it's a letter we got from the start of a game threatening us with Obed's name on it, I have to assume he's going to show up again at some point. I don't know about the dog, and it's a bit too early to tell, I guess. There's not been any barking in the distance or paw prints anywhere, but the night is still young. In any case, that's 12 characters mentioned, 2 of whom we've actually met, which are the main characters. You can finally cross the piazza and enter the stair hall, where I expected the stuffed grizzly bear at some point to come alive and try to eat us. We're dealing with supernatural stuff, so I suspect anything out of the ordinary is possible. This is where the front door is, and Emily can finally come in after 15 minutes of waiting. And finally, we see that there are, in fact, other people residing here. We don't get all their names, but McCarthy is mentioned. Guess we can add one more to the character list. We're confronted by what looks like a maid. She tells us we're trespassing, which we are, mind you, and to leave immediately, but she doesn't exactly threaten us with calling the police. And then when Emily mentions knocking, the girl on the stairs states this:
We can't hear you knocking anymore. None of us can.
which is a weird thing to say. I don't know if she means that in the literal sense, or if she's saying nobody ever comes around. I suspect it's the former, and it's weird to think how that's possible. Even if magic were in place somehow, I don't think this game has that kind of magic where they'd be like a silencing spell or something, right? The woman at the door mentions Jeremy is missing, and it might be some time before anyone finds him, despite the fact that the whole staff is looking for him. How the fuck are you going to say Emily's uncle is missing for an unforeseeable amount of time and think that's going to be okay? I mean, this is a big place, but it's not that big. Not with all the freaking locked doors. How does she even know that he hasn't left the building entirely? Edward over here got in on his own. Who's to say Jeremy didn't get out and become eaten by a crocodile? Also, are police out of the question? You've got a missing patient who admitted himself to the psychological problems, and it's just the staff that are looking for him? No authorities? Hell, maybe they want to keep things from outside guests, which is why she wants us gone, but still. What kind of operation has Dr. Gray got going on over here? Edward point blank tells her that they'll just go ahead and wait in his room, and that surely she wouldn't mind, which I think is something Hopper would totally do in Stranger Things. Just passively brute force his way into a location while the other person is a little too stunned to say no. In Jeremy Hartwood's room, there's a locked box you can open after reading the Commonplace book, as you'll get the painted tile from it. There's a lot to unpack in the Commonplace book, with its 5 different pages, but we learn a lot about what Jeremy has to say in regards to the Dark Man and the fluctuations of reality in Derceto.
Every night the Dark Man stands opaque at the threshold of my room, counting the days until my spirit spills out of my tired shape. Only his pallid mask shelters my remaining sanity. Staring directly into the face of that demonic sultan would surely sunder time itself. Would he have looked the same to my father as he struggled for his life? Does his veiled face haunt my niece quite the same way? I wish so that I could rest my soul in that sunburnt convent of Teruel. Would I find you there, Juan? Or Senora Perosi? Back from the beyond? Every night I hide from him, moving from one misshapen memory to another. Scenes conjured out of fantasy and delirium. Places I struggle to even paint. I wish I understood your death, Signora. Is there anything I could do for you but bury you in that bleak necropolis? That triumphant chapel rising above the ledges and the oven vaults shall be your sepulchre, where you may rest, and I shall weep.
I don't exactly know what's going on with the Dark Man at this point, but he seems to be waiting for Jeremy to die, perhaps, judging by the line, counting the days until my spirit spills out of my tired shape. That's a bit dramatic, but it gets the point across. Jeremy is tired of whatever's going on, maybe more mentally than physically, and the clock is counting down. It's also stated that the Dark Man stands at the threshold of Jeremy's room, as an ominous figure being all foreboding, or can he literally not step into Jeremy's room? He wears a mask instead of baring his face, which saves Jeremy a sanity. I get the feeling it's being dramatized, and the man wears a mask for a specific reason, maybe only revealing his face to someone who's died. And Jeremy labeled him as a demonic sultan, so a Muslim sovereign? I don't know, whenever I think of a sultan, I think of Jafar from Aladdin. So now this dude just looks like Jafar with a mask on for me. And you can see what the mask kind of looks like in the drawing of the book we're reading. Here's some interesting lines, though. Would he have looked the same to my father as he struggled for his life? Does his veiled face haunt my niece quite the same way? Remember at the start in the car ride when Emily said this kind of thing runs in her family? Does that mean the Dark Man is tied to their bloodline somehow? Would he then be the root of the problem in their deaths and how they die? This is a lot of theorizing here since the start of the game and the first time we've heard any kind of information about the Dark Man who's been stalking Jeremy, apparently. It's just kind of interesting to try and sort things out with what little information we have. Even though I played some of the game so far, I'm not getting to the end yet, so it's still all up in the air as to what really is going on for me. On the first page still, Teruya is mentioned, as well as two characters, one being Juan and the other being Senor Perosi. We're gonna assume Perosi is dead because her name is followed up by Back from the Beyond. I have no idea about Juan, though. Looking it up, Teruya doesn't seem to be an actual place, either. Moving onward, it seems he's jumping from one memory to another in order to hide from the Dark Man, which is... I don't know, it's hard to grasp when you don't actually live in a world where this stuff isn't out of the ordinary. On one hand, maybe he can't reside in one of these memories because the Dark Man will eventually find him, but on the other, maybe they're dangerous memories due to the fact that they're misshapen and born from a fantastical and delirious mind. He also doesn't know how or why Senora died, but he buried her in a chapel, which is drawn on the page as well. That wasn't his wife or significant other, was it? It's just weird that that's where she'll rest and where he'll weep. It just sounds like a really close bond, even though we don't know the bond between him and Emily or him and Juan at the moment.
How did you first come to understand such things, Signora? How did you know that the battered boiler in the basement would lead me to Lafayette Cemetery? Or how the old upstairs clock, with its astronomical motifs, would take me to that hateful mound outside of Claremont Harbor? Those are my memories, my past. Is there perhaps a chance, if ever so small, for me to see Teruya? Oh, I want that more than anything. Please, let my talisman take me there. Let me sit with Juan under his Bodhi tree. Despite having sold me that talisman, Miss Jackson, the voodoo priestess, revealed none of her secrets to me. That's why I had to travel to Tonka. Instead, she cruelly told Baptiste, my caretaker, that he would be betrayed and killed in the most awful way, that the one he loved would pierce his thigh with a sharp spear, and that he would be devoured by his own mother. What a terrible thing to say.
Nah, she couldn't be either of those, because the second page makes it sound as if she were part of that staff at the hospital. Because she knew about, I guess, the cracks in reality? The places he could go to that would tear a hole in reality and form a place of his own memories? He mentions Teruya again as a place he really wants to go to. I don't know if it's just to visit Juan or some other reason since he's not exactly staying in any other memory he's reached. There's talk of a talisman sold to him by Miss Jackson, who happens to be a voodoo priestess. Due to not sharing her secrets, he had to travel to Tonker? I forget what he said the name was. Which I have no idea once again where that is because it doesn't seem to be an actual place. At this point, while it's frustrating, it also makes you wonder what's real and what's fictionalized by Jeremy, because some things you just can't find information on. Is that his sanity gone astray and making up locations he believes to be real, or are they real but not in the reality that we know? Whatever the case, it seems he learned what the Talons could do when he went to that place, and she wouldn't deal any information. Although it's stated that she told Baptiste, who we now know as Jeremy's caretaker, that he'd be betrayed and killed with the line that the one he loved would pierce his thigh with a sharp spear, and that he would be devoured by his own mother. I just want you to know, I've watched way too much Hazbin Hotel, and I've been so hung up on it that I'm now imagining someone using an angelic spear on him, and one of the cannibals from Cannibal Town being his mom, and also the one to eat him. So thank you, Hazbin Hotel, for that mental image.
The people of Derceto are becoming dangerous. They do not understand what they are doing. I must do something to stop them. I tried talking to Dr. Gray, but he confuses my worries. He's caught up in treating me. How can he expect evil to be cured with medicine and conversation? The orderlies, the housekeeper, and the patients are all deranged. They will call upon evil to enter this world. All will be lost. Everything. Unless I can find the clerk, Mr. Waite. He seems to be a clear-thinking man. Maybe Beauregard.
On the third page, he mentions that the personnel at Derceto are becoming dangerous and wanting to call evil upon the world. Maybe they have something to do with the Dark Man? Though he states that Mr. Waite, who's the clerk, as well as Beauregard, seem to have a clear head about them. I don't know why he went to the doctor about them or what they're up to, aside from it being a compulsory action. Oh, he's a doctor, he'll listen to me. Except this is a psychiatric hospital with patients that aren't all quite right in the head. So of course he wouldn't believe Jeremy's words at face value.
The Dark Man offered me a prison, and I accepted. I signed that miscarried contract and entered the Dark Pact. Everyone is safe, except for me.
On the fourth page, there's an image of Derceto in the middle of nowhere with what looks like a black sun. Is it a black hole? Jeremy writes that the Dark Man offered him a prison, and so now everyone is safe except for him. Has he somehow teleported Derceto to a place that can't be reached by anyone because nobody knows where it is, or that it even exists? How did we come across it then, if that's the case? Unless the pact hasn't been made to fruition because Jeremy's still alive. Is this what the girl meant by they can't hear anyone knock anymore? The place is slowly phasing out? The fifth page shows 4 drawings that will no doubt be important later on. It's a lot to unpack and a lot to think on. After you read the book, you can speak with Emily on it and question if she knows anything about Tarawea. Being the amazing investigator we are, we tell her that we think that's where he wants to go. He literally said he wanted to go there in the book. What the hell kind of stupid deduction was that? On the dresser, which holy shit has 6 drawers. Why does it have 6 drawers? You wouldn't have hardly any room to fit anything in them except small stuff. Interact with a locked box. Place a painted tile on it and you'll find yourself solving one of the easiest puzzles ever. Just move the pieces where they need to be with what looks like a tree with a Celtic knot as the tree's roots on the bottom. Oh, but don't worry, they're not all this easy. But they're not all difficult either. There's a scene regarding a piece of paper with a talisman and how it's supposed to be pieced together drawn on it. Also, I don't know how it looks like a talisman to Edward. Is he used to seeing this kind of stuff as a private investigator? I mean, I wouldn't even know what a talisman looks like because they are literally any object, just infused with magical properties. He might as well just say that it says it's a talisman on the paper. Afterwards, Emily requests her assistance as she pulls a red painting from beneath the work table. The painting is very reminiscent of some of the works you can find in the game Call of Cthulhu. There's a scared-looking man who I can assume is Jeremy, holding not just a talisman that we found paperwork on, but also a cross and a pouch, maybe? Could that be Grigri he's carrying around? In his other hand, he's holding a book titled Reflection on the Power of the... and I can't read the rest of it. It's either a title of something or written in another language. That or I'm not squinting hard enough. The first name of the author is clear, though. Juan. Maybe the Juan he's been talking about who's in Tarawea? In any case, his face is clear when at terror and turmoil, and if I've learned anything from the Lovecraftian type of games, it's not to mess with shit like this. It even draws our character in, like there's a distinct pull where we're about to lose ourselves to the same madness that the painting has captured. And of course Emily wants to keep the damn thing, which is a godsend, believe it or not, because as soon as it's rolled up and put away, we kind of snap out of whatever thrall it had us in. Don't get me wrong, it's an awesome painting of oneself, but where the hell are you going to put it without creeping people out? We don't really question it though, just like many things, and follow the other out the door, where they've disappeared. Things are also a bit different than they were before. If I've got the layout correct, we're actually on the second floor where Dr. Gray's apartment can be located. However, when we first went up the steps, it was from the stair hall. Where we are now is as if we'd taken the servants' stairs on the other side. I could be mistaken though. It looks like that's the case, and this game looks are obviously deceiving and my memory has had a leak for years now, so maybe I'm fitting pieces of a puzzle together that obviously don't match. Either way, when you look out over the balcony, the street is completely different, and this is also where you're currently denied any kind of snooping about within the confines of the house, because the doors are blocked off by brooms and such. Your only way of destination is out the first floor door that'll lead you out into the street where there's a monster that lurks at the end of the alleyway. Behind you there are some bullets, but this is the part where one might point out my complaint of the initial inspection of the house where we found out a lot of bullets loitering about. Obviously I complained about things being too open, and I stand by that, because you can still go through rooms to reach the front door without having so many available to snoop through. My cat is chirping. So there'd still be ammo to obtain, just less time dawdling about. Alright, so this is our first take on the combat system, and it's not something one might be thrilled to experience multiple times. For now, all we have is our gun, so all we can do is shoot. I believe 3 shots to the head will down these guys, but body shots may need an extra bullet or 2 to bring them down. The smaller ones you're dealing with here don't have any long-range abilities, so all they can do is stumble forward until they're in melee range, where they'll swipe at you. They also make little growling noises when they've not noticed you, so if you listen, you can hear them. Meaning if you listen closely, there's another monster right around the corner out the alley. However, before dealing with that bugger, I'd like to state a fun little problem. When dodging out of the way of the first enemy, my character ended up stepping up onto something in the environment. Once he did that, I was unable to move forward. I was stuck on whatever I was standing on. Be it a box or a table or a chair, this can happen in the game. Apparently you're meant to stay on the ground, otherwise your character becomes confused on how to step back onto the ground. Oh, I'm standing on a bench, however will I get back down? When dealing with these 2 monsters at the start, it almost feels like you could have run past them if you wanted to, since there's no closed door you'd have to interact with, just an open gate that spills out into the street. Maybe this was an opening they put in just in case someone didn't have enough bullets and there'd be no way to fight both monsters. The problem is I don't know if they get to a certain point and reset back to where they initially were, or if they just stop following you altogether, or if they continue after you. Most game enemies will lose focus after a bit, but you never know. This is a Lovecraftian game after all. These enemies aren't quite your typical run-of-the-mill, forget about them type of creatures. If you ended up shooting them dead, you'll get the achievement, now you're on the trolley. You also might have noticed in that fight that reloading sucks when you're in the middle of combat. It's such a slow process and you can't run your way through it. You have to walk while slotting the bullets back into the chamber all nonchalantly, like there aren't bloodthirsty beasts breathing down your neck. Always, always reload once you're out of combat. When you're actually out onto the streets, I'm still kind of hung up on how not much is being said about what's going on. I get that a lot of people don't want to hear the character randomly talk to themselves a lot, and if you're one of those people, I don't think you'd enjoy playing Oxenfree, because those kids do not have an off switch. However, this is more of a detective game, so it's up to the main character to kind of deduce what's going on. And the only thing they say when approaching the corner store is,
What the hell is going on?
which has already been asked before without an answer. Basically, a private investigator is Edward's job, so he has to figure things out. Emily is merely a family member who's looking for her uncle and making sure he's alright. So I wouldn't think she'd be one to work things out, and dare I say maybe she's even used to this kind of thing, where Edward wouldn't be. So why is he not freaking out more? Also, the game gives us the input for sprint as we traverse down the road, as if that wouldn't have been helpful just a little earlier in the game. We don't exactly walk fast, you know. When you reach the store, there's a bicycle out front that you can ring the bell on. There's no achievement that I can tell for ringing bells in this game. This won't be the first one you come across, and so it makes me wonder if the noise is to alert monsters. Otherwise, it just kind of feels weird to have them around. Dinging bells is fun and all, but it's even more fun when you're dinging the bell for a purpose. Like annoying someone at the front counter. When you enter the store, there's a conversation between you and Baptiste. You find out that it's confirmed Jeremy has entered a pact with a dark man. We're also being paid $150 to help Emily find Jeremy, which he was just supposed to be at the hospital, so it's weird to pay someone that much just to confirm they're where they should be? Is that confirmation that she knew he wouldn't just be at Drissetto? Why else would she need to pay him? If he knew the crap he was about to be put through, you know he'd be wanting a lot more as payments. I wouldn't put it past him to collect some kind of raise at the end of all this. Again, there's confirmation that Jeremy got his talisman from a Miss Jackson down the street, and it's how he's hiding from everyone. We get Baptiste's keys to the gate he's locked up to keep the ghouls and goblins out. Does this mean that these creatures have no name? They're just creepy monsters that lurk about this world that seems to be a twisted memory Jeremy's? Edward doesn't even acknowledge the ghouls and goblins statement. Ugh! It just pisses me off that there's no more context as to what's going on. There's not more questions being thrown about. There's no internal dialogue when it comes to trying to wrap their mind around what this is all about. It's just like, it is what it is mentality. The next enemy we come across is a bit more deformed than the first ones. This is also where we get a tutorial on throwing things at enemies, which are basically bricks that are laying around. Here's another con of the combat system. I'm not sure if you're capable of directly holding onto the item without the explicit need to throw it. The text says to tap to throw the item or to hold to aim, but that means when you pick it up and release, it's automatically thrown. So now you have one less thing to use against a nearby enemy. I tried seeing if I could somehow get around this because I couldn't fathom how the game would want you to hold onto an item while aiming it when you walk so incredibly slow while doing so. And there aren't even any enemies nearby once you take out the big guy, so it's like, why am I holding this? So while holding down the aim button, I went into the menu and then backed out. After that, I was actually holding onto the brick, without specifically aiming it. So I could move around normally. The problem I was then faced with was that I couldn't throw the damn thing. I had to press every button to figure out how to get rid of the brick in my hands, since I couldn't even aim my pistol at this point. Oh, but I could reload, so no worries there. I just can't shoot the gun that I just reloaded. Because I have a brick in my hand. That I can't seem to get rid of. Eventually I got rid of the brick by pressing some button that I can't remember, but that's kind of a big issue. Not only that, but at some point I decided to switch to keyboard and mouse because let's face it, shooting things is so much more convenient on a mouse than it is on a controller, and half the time I couldn't bring my gun up to aim. My cursor was on the screen after I switched to mouse, and when the cursor is on the screen, you're not actually in the game. It acts as if you're doing things outside of the game and therefore can't do specific things, like aim a gun at a monster coming at you. I had to revert back to controller to get everything working properly again. I don't know if you have to start the game with a mouse and keyboard in order to continue that functionality, but I do know not to ever switch mid-combat or I'm screwed. Before you unlock the gate, if you look around you might be able to find a hatchet, which is a melee weapon. God, this game's pissed me off, man. So there's a hatchet. You might be able to use it as a melee weapon to use against monsters. Not might be. You can use it. Unfortunately for us, these melee weapons have durability to them. Even more unfortunate for us is we don't know what their durability status is until they're either showing a yellow broken symbol next to the image, or until they just break on you. Trust me when I say don't rely on them too heavily. They do break after like 10 swipes or so on an enemy, maybe even less. And once you kill an enemy with a melee weapon, you earn the achievement, Come At Me. After unlocking the gate, you'll come across 3 enemies, 2 of which are upstairs, and another which will come out at you on the ground floor. You have bricks to throw, but I don't suggest trying to aim for the big guy that's patrolling back and forth up top, because your odds of hitting it are slim to none, thanks to the railing blocking a good shot. You can instead lure it down the staircase and fight it in the open, and then go upstairs to attack the enemy that's hiding around the corner like some mugger in an alleyway. This is where you'll find the Lanyap Juju. When you enter the room, Edward recognizes this place as Miss Jackson's seance parlor. But how? Is he local? Was there an image of it that we somehow didn't see up to this point? I still don't understand how he could recognize it unless he's already been here before. Has he? I don't think he has. Here's where we pick up the talisman for the achievement In Between Their Doors, and place it onto the slot under the table. The combination is found in the Talisman schematics over inventory 358. These puzzles get me every single time. I always end up placing the top and bottom numbers opposite of what they're meant to be. The top, or smaller section, should be 8, and the bottom, larger portion, should be 3, making the middle section 5. So if you've got all the numbers aligned properly and it doesn't do anything, switch the top and bottom. I know it's a me thing. It's always a me thing. The large dark slot in the talisman will reveal the place, which Edward doesn't know the location despite being in the same freaking room as the object the talisman reveals. Literally, it reveals the table we found this thing on, and a torn painting, which we can see is right on the wall, in front of us. Luckily, we don't have to look, because the door automatically opens for us, spilling us back into reality and into Dr. Gray's office. I hate this guy. He sounds so evil. All dry and sibilant, and the amount of times he calls me detective is over the top. Like, drop whatever act you're trying to pull because I get the skittery skin when you're near me, bro. He can't possibly be a friendly doctor to these patients, not with the kind of demeanor he's oozing. Let's see all the lines where he calls me detective, shall we?
Detective. I was wondering when you were going to show up. You don't happen to have some identification, detective? Enjoying the view carré, detective? Well, welcome to Deseto, detective. A drink, detective? Oh, you do belong in the French quarters, detective. Armagnac or cognac?
You know, just give me the cheap stuff. I'm not much of a connoisseur.
Having low standards is not a virtue, detective.
I know I'm a detective, but you don't shut the fuck up with pointing it out constantly, I swear. The doctor doesn't give us much to go on as to Jeremy's whereabouts, and he doesn't seem all that concerned about a patient of his missing, which is concerning in itself. Instead, he gives you a drink and shoos you off to speak with the orderlies who might need help in their search. Even my cat is, like, nagging. And that, folks, is where we are met with Chapter 2. And where this portion of the podcast teaser just drops off. So I hope you had fun listening. Hope it was intriguing. Like I said, I haven't played the full game, so I don't know what's like, what I'm right about, what I'm wrong about. I do like the game. I know it's like pissed me off a whole bunch. My cat has her string and she wants me to play with her. But it's like, I like it, but it's also really bad. So far. As far as I've played it up to a certain point, I know things pick up a little bit, so that's good. Whew. If you want to hear more about it, hit the likes, tell me in the comments, tell me what you think, all your thoughts. I am working on a written review of this game, and it's a mouthful. Everything I've just stated in this video is written so far. So you can read that if you'd like. Link will be in the description. Guys, have a fantabulous day.